before the generals drew maps, before the kings raised their swords, there was a whisper, a voice no one saw, a presence no one dared name aloud. She did not lead armies. She never wore a crown. But in every crumbled city, every blood-stained throne, and every forgotten battlefield, her fingerprints remain. She was known by many names: the Seer of Ash, the Veiled One, the Oracle who bled words. Her voice never rose in court, yet kingdoms rose and fell by her breath. This is her story. A tale of visions carved in bone, of empires misled, and of a single woman who made war her prophecy. In the high cliffs of ancient Siritha, there stood a tower without windows, wrapped in dark ivy and legend. No one knew who built it. Some claimed it had no door. Others said it appeared overnight, like a wound on the land. Inside, cloaked in candlelight and silence, lived a girl with no name. They called her the Black Veil. She was taken from her mother as a child, chosen by the gods, said the priests. But those who watched the carriage leave said her mother wept like the sky was dying. Raised in shadows and scripture, the girl learned not to speak, but to listen. Not to dream, but to see. And in the deep hours of night, she whispered into bowls of oil and ash, visions so sharp they bled from her lips. She predicted the plague of red fever that killed half the eastern tribes. She foresaw the sea pulling back before the great flood swallowed the southern cities. And she knew, with cruel precision, when the king's son would fall from the citadel walls. But her words were never gifts. They were weapons, bartered, sold, and twisted. And soon every king, conqueror, and council sent envoys to her tower, not for truth but for permission to start war. Because her whisper could make a sword holy, and her silence could damn an empire. The kingdom of Marnus had flourished under peace for nearly a generation. Its fields were golden, its trade routes rich, and its people, for once, quiet with full stomachs. But peace, like ripe fruit, never lasts. And in Marnus, a single worm was enough to spoil the harvest. His name was Lord Kale, a younger brother to the king. Ambitious, elegant, hungry. He smiled in court but sharpened knives in private. And in the dark corners of his chambers, he spoke of omens. He claimed the skies trembled, that the moon bled, that the gods whispered of a coming curse, unless the kingdom struck first. Few believed him. Fewer dared oppose him. But all knew the source of his conviction. Kale had visited the oracle. He returned from Siritha pale, eyes wide, lips sealed. He offered no scroll, no proof, only a name scratched in ash: Orin, the rival kingdom across the dead divide. Within weeks, the king's council, once wise and cautious, turned cold with fear. They spoke of destiny, of sacred warnings, of blood that must be spilled to prevent doom. And so, for the first time in 40 years, the drums of Marnus beat for war. But not because of soldiers, not because of strategy, because one woman, unseen and alone in a tower, whispered a single name into Lord Kale's ear. And though no one heard it, the world would soon echo with its consequences. War had not yet begun on the fields, but it had already begun on the parchment. Messengers galloped through valleys with sealed scrolls, wax stamped with the crimson crest of Marnus. Forged alliances, secret deals, quiet threats. And in the king's own scriptorium, the real weapons were ink in silence. There, beneath a vaulted ceiling painted with heavenly peace, the quill of Kale scratched steadily across sheepskin vellum. Not letters, but lies. False reports of Orin's armies amassing. Fake letters, supposedly intercepted, that promised an invasion. Maps, doctored with red ink to show phantom troop movement. Each page sealed the future more than any sword ever could. And beside Kale, always watching, was the pale scribe called Velis, mute, loyal, and tireless. He knew no language but the one Kale gave him. He transcribed terror into beauty. He painted treason into truth. When King Arden received the final scroll, he did not hesitate. He ordered the horns of war blown at dawn. He summoned his generals. He sent prayers to the temple. But there was one voice he never heard. A whisperer in shadows, neither soldier nor scribe. The spy. Already inside Orin. Already watching. Already carving secrets into skin. And somewhere in the night, in a distant chamber lit only by oil and doubt, a priest closed a book and murmured, "The war they begin with words, they will end with ghosts." Across the divide in the obsidian-walled capital of Orin, a man knelt in front of a mirror, bare to the waist, blade in hand. His name had been lost long ago. He was known now only as the Hollow. Once a scholar, now a whisper in the Empire's walls. He was not a spy by choice but by punishment. Caught stealing royal scrolls from the Temple of Breath. He was given a choice, death or silence. He chose silence. He chose the blade. The first time he carved into himself, it was a name, then dates, then border routes, then troop patterns, then code. His skin became a scroll, a living archive of war. No ink, only scars. The hollow moved through Orin's halls unnoticed. He bowed when spoken to. He delivered messages with humble eyes. And by night, he studied the kingdom's pulse. It was he who learned that the city's northern wall had rotted beneath the stone. He who discovered the queen's private escape tunnel. He who knew the high priest's daily prayer was now laced with doubt. And every night he whispered what he knew, into a single blackbird. One trained to fly only to Siritha, to the oracle. She never responded. She never sent a word. But the hollow knew. Her silence meant everything. 4 months, the Tower of Siritha had remained quiet, its lantern dim, its doors sealed. The world outside burned. But the oracle kept her silence. And silence became fear. The kings of 2 empires waited for her next whisper. The hollow bled new secrets every week. Kale sat sleepless by the fire, wondering if he had misunderstood her signs. And then, one night, the mountain flickered. A single flame appeared in the highest window of the tower. It danced for exactly 9 breaths. To the outside world it meant nothing. But to those who waited, who watched, it was thunder. The next morning, messengers in black veils rode in every direction. They bore no crest. Only folded parchment sealed with gray wax, marked by an eye with no pupil. Inside each message just one line. Blood spilled before the harvest shall not bear fruit. To some, it was a warning. To others, a curse. But to Lord Kale, it was permission. He knew the oracle's codes. She had not said stop. She had said when. And the harvest moon was just weeks away. The drums of Marnus began to beat again, louder this time. Orin braced. The hollow prepared new blades. And the oracle returned to her silence. It began not with a roar, but with the sudden absence of birdsong. The dawn of war came under a sky so thick with cloud, the sun could not pierce it. Across the field known as the Whispering Plain, the armies of Marnus and Orin stood motionless, faces hidden by iron, hearts heavy with fate. They waited for the signal. A horn, a scream, anything. But it was the hollow who gave the true beginning. Hidden behind Orin's flank, he reached beneath his robes and drew a blade, not to kill an enemy, but to cut open his chest. With trembling hands, he revealed the last secret carved into his ribs, a strategy stolen from Marnus months ago. As blood poured over the ground, he threw the scroll into the wind. It fluttered across the battlefield like a broken feather, falling at the feet of Orin's commander. And then, the first horn blew. Steel met steel, fire met flesh. But it was not a battle of glory. It was a battle of confusion, betrayal, and secrets no one understood. The sky never brightened. The sun never rose. The oracle had warned. Blood spilled before the harvest shall not bear fruit. And as soldiers fell into mud and mist, both sides began to wonder if the fruit they were promised had already rotted. Far from the battlefield, in the throne room of Marnus, the king sat in silence, not with triumph but with unease. Reports arrived by crow and courier. The battle was underway. Orin had taken losses, but Marnus was not winning. The strategies had been sound. The numbers favored them. But something unseen unraveled everything. A fog of bad luck. A taste of poison in every success. King Arden, once confident in Kale's vision, now questioned the path they had chosen. And beneath his throne, literally beneath it, a fire burned. Hidden within the royal crypts, Kale had made a pact with the Temple of Breath. In exchange for silence and access, he gave them coin and names. They gave him relics, ancient charms, dust made from crushed prophecy scrolls. He burned them every night, believing the smoke would ensure victory, that the oracle's silence would become his voice. But smoke never obeys its master. It slips into lungs, into cracks, into thoughts. Even Kale began to dream of water, rising up the throne steps, of whispers in dead languages, of a veiled woman pointing at his chest, and laughing. He awoke choking, but the smoke was not there. Not yet. And in Siritha, the oracle stirred for the first time in days. Not to speak, not to write, but to cry. Her tears mixed with ash, and the bowl before her turned black. Long ago, before kingdoms, before coins, before calendars, the oracle was not a single woman, but a lineage, passed from mother to daughter, not by blood, but by burden. The veil was not cloth. It was memory, a weight made of visions, collected and carried across centuries. But in the time of Siritha, something changed. This oracle, the last of her line, was not chosen. She was taken, and with her came something new, something dark. She did not only see the future, she began to bend it. When she cried, men fell. When she whispered, kingdoms shifted. And when she dreamed, rivers changed course. Those close to her began to call it a curse. They said her prophecies were not warnings, but weapons, that her silence could kill more surely than a sword, that her grief alone could rot a harvest. And now, as two kingdoms bled themselves into dust, she wept once more. Her tears carved new cracks into the tower stones. Ash fell upward. The flame in her window burned without fuel. And far away, in a battlefield tent soaked in blood, Lord Kale awoke gasping for air. His eyes filled with smoke. His ears echoing with a voice that was not his. You mistook the future for a mirror. But mirrors break. The battlefield lay quiet now. Not with peace, but with exhaustion. Ash-covered armor. Arrows snapped beneath the feet of men too tired to fear them. And in a shallow trench near the dead of Orin, the hollow still breathed, barely. His skin, once covered in sharp inscriptions, was now smeared with mud and blood. But across his chest, one message remained untouched. A final carving, fresh, deliberate, and deep. Not the king, the brother. With shaking hands, he reached into a pouch sewn behind his ribs. There, wrapped in cloth, was a shard of obsidian, as black as the night he had given his name away. He pressed it to his side, and dragged the blade across the message. A final cut, a seal, a warning. And then he tied the cloth around his body, sent one final bird, and waited for death. The raven reached Siritha by dusk. It did not cry, did not flutter. It simply landed on the oracle's window, and stared. She approached it slowly, took the scroll, unwrapped it. She read the words, not the king, the brother. And for the first time in years, she spoke aloud. The wrong man wears the crown. That night the mountain shook, not from prophecy, but from purpose. The throne of Marnus had always been cold to the touch, carved from black granite and veined with silver. It was said to hold the weight of every king's regret. But on the night after the Hollow's final message reached Siritha, the throne grew warm. Kale sat upon it, not as ruler, not yet, but as shadow. King Arden was absent, locked in his prayer chambers, his mind unraveling beneath the weight of doubt. Kale had taken command in his stead, and his hands now gripped the throne's arms like a man already crowned. Below him, courtiers watched in silence, not with loyalty, but with fear. Whispers had begun to slither through the palace halls. The oracle never named Orin as the enemy. Kale speaks for ghosts, not gods. The war bleeds truth from the land. That night, Kale ordered the fire beneath the throne chamber to be stoked. He claimed the room had grown too cold. But as the flames roared louder, strange things happened. The silver in the stone began to glow. Paintings on the walls curled at the corners. The shadows of the columns stretched toward the throne, like reaching hands. Kale did not flinch. He welcomed the heat, because in it he felt something ancient. Not rage, not power, but permission. Let the fire rise, he whispered. Let it consume what's weak. And above him, unseen in the rafters, a raven watched, its eyes reflecting flame. That same night, far away in the tower of Siritha, the oracle placed her hand on a map. It burned beneath her touch, and the kingdom of Marnus turned to black. Siritha had not heard a human voice in weeks. The mountain winds howled through its halls. Candles burned low, unmoved by breath. And the oracle, wrapped in layers of gray veils, sat unmoving in her stone chair, eyes open but unblinking, watching a future only she could see. She had not spoken since the raven came. Not to her scribes, not to the stars, not even to the wind that once whispered back. But silence, like a bow, can only hold tension for so long. And on the seventh night since the Hollow's last message, the bowstring snapped. Her voice, dry as sand, cracked the chamber like thunder. The fire sits where stone should be. The scribes gasped. One fainted. Another ran down the tower steps to ring the bell that had not tolled in over a generation. The oracle was speaking. More words followed, like water breaking through a dam. The brother drinks what was meant for the king. Truth bleeds where gold rests. The throne is cracked beneath its fire. Each sentence echoed as if spoken by more than one voice. as if centuries of oracles now spoke through her at once. In the capital of Marnus, that same hour, Kale stared into a mirror. The reflection no longer looked like him. The crown beside him seemed to shrink. And across the sea of ash and broken banners, in the ruins of Oren's outer gate, a small flame lit in the eyes of a dying commander, as if some unseen force had just shifted the war. The oracle's silence was over, and the storm it once held back was coming. The skies above Marnus darkened, not with storm, but with wings. Dozens of ravens flew in from the north, from the coasts, from the broken towers of Oren, and from the oracle's peak. No one had summoned them. No one dared stop them. They circled the palace like omens made of shadow and ash, and one by one they began to perch. On windowsills, iron fences, statues of dead kings. One raven landed on the shoulder of a royal guard. Another stood atop the crown in the royal vault. But one, larger than the rest, with eyes like cracked obsidian, flew straight into Kale's chambers. He did not flinch. He extended a hand, and the bird obeyed. Tied to its leg was a scroll of black parchment, marked with a seal no one alive had seen before. An eye stitched shut. Kale read it slowly. What? Then again. There were no threats, no prophecies, only a question. What burns louder, truth or power? Kale did not sleep that night. He paced between flames, between mirrors, between maps. And the raven stayed, watching, waiting. Meanwhile, far beneath the palace, in the catacombs once sealed by royal decree, an old gate creaked open. Someone was moving in the dark, guided only by memory, and by feathers. Beneath the throne of Marnus, past corridors lined with cracked statues, lay a chamber forgotten by most, but never by the oracle. It was once a library, then a prison, then a tomb, and now, a place of echoes. In its center stood a stone altar, etched with words no one had spoken for 1,000 years. A dead language they called it, too old, too cursed, too close to truth. But the scribes of Siritha had kept its meaning alive, buried deep in sealed scrolls, inked only in shadows. Now that language began to stir again. Whispers filled the catacombs, from where no one could say. But guards at the lowest posts reported hearing voices, when no one was there. The fire is not yours. He was never meant to sit. Return the name. Kale, drawn by instinct or fear, descended the steps alone. He entered the chamber with a torch and a lie burning on his tongue. The altar did not recognize him, but it remembered him. He traced the carvings with his hand, and the letters began to glow, not with magic, but with memory. They told a story of two brothers, one born of blood, one born of bone. Only one could sit the throne without consequence, and Kale was not the one. As the flames of his torch flickered, the whispers grew louder. Not angry, not cruel, just disappointed. You knew. You took what was never offered. Now you must burn. And in that moment, Kale dropped the torch. The flames kissed the altar, and the dead language spoke back. At dawn, the royal guards entered the throne room of Marnus, and found the floor slick with red. No body, no footprints, just blood. It seeped from the cracks beneath the black granite throne, slow and steady, like the earth itself had been wounded. Word spread before the sun fully rose. The throne is bleeding. Some claimed it was a trick, a dramatization by rebels or priests, but no one could explain how the blood had soaked through the stone, or why it never dried. King Arden, still locked away in madness, did not emerge. Kale, who had last been seen descending into the crypts, did not return. And the raven, the one with the cracked obsidian eyes, still perched atop the throne, silent, unmoving, as if watching the kingdom fall apart one truth at a time. In Siritha the oracle felt the shift. She lit no flame. She chanted no spell. She simply stood for the first time in weeks, and whispered to the mountain air. The fire has found its shape. The scribes knew what it meant. It was not about war, not about kingdoms. It was about legacy. What bleeds beneath the throne will rise through generations, and in every crown forged after, there will be a flaw, a reminder of the man who stole fire and thought he could wear it. The war did not end with a treaty. No flags were lowered. No trumpets played. It simply stopped. Soldiers wandered from the fields like ghosts released from duty. Swords were left in mud. Armor rusted in silence. Both Oren and Marnus had lost more than men. They had lost the thread of why they fought. The oracle spoke one final prophecy, not in rhyme, not in riddle, but in truth. There will be no victor, only memory, and even that will fade. In the years that followed, the throne of Marnus remained empty. The black granite, once bleeding, hardened again, but now bore a crack down its center. The name Kale was never written in the scrolls. His fate was never confirmed. Only whispers remained, that he had been consumed by what he tried to control, that the fire beneath the throne had taken him, or worse, had spared him. The oracle was seen once more, walking barefoot into the sea, robes trailing behind her like mist. She did not return. And the ravens? They stayed, watching, waiting. Centuries passed. Kings came and went. Wars rose and fell. But in quiet corners of the kingdom, children still spoke of the fire, of the hollow, of the bleeding stone, and of a raven who never blinked. And deep beneath the palace, where the air is thick with dust and time, an altar still glows softly, not with heat, not with light, but with memory, because some sins are never buried. They are only written in ash.